We are going to talk about flexibility. We have heard from fleet managers, mobility managers, that they would like to optimize their corporate fleet management, and that they would like also to have more flexibility for the employees in terms of solutions. And those employees, apparently, according to Eva Lawless of Mercer, also would like to have flexibility when it comes to time. Well, I think that the next session will answer all those questions. And I see already 3 experts in the room. Let me present them to you. So first of all, our good friend Stuart Donnelly, Global Sales Director at Sixt, and Sixt is also our founding partner. Stuart, welcome. Welcome to the Global Fleet Conference.
Greetings, my friend. Thank you for having us. Great conference.
It's great. Then we have also in this session, Nicholas Nelson. He is Global Lodgings and EMEIA, Developed Markets Travel, M&E leader. That's quite a title, Nicholas.
What a mouthful.
Yes, indeed. But welcome to the Smart Mobility Conference. And then our third expert is Paul Hollick. He is the chairman of the Association of Fleet Professionals, and he is the managing director of the Miles Consultancy. Paul, welcome.
Thank you, Stephen. Nice to be here.
So we are eager to know how we can add more flexibility into our mobility schemes. I know that Stuart will run this session, so I'm going to put myself on mute and give you all the possibilities to make it an engaging session. For the audience, if you have questions, use the chat so that at the end we can perhaps also ask some questions to our panel members. Thank you.
Super. Thank you very much, Stephen. Yeah, I guess in terms of a broader introduction, my name is Stuart Donnelly, as Stephen mentioned, otherwise known as Stuart Mobility Donnelly, which some of you may laugh, but that kind of, as the name suggests, you can well imagine I'm an advocate for the topic of mobility, but moreover, I'm an advocate for the new world of flexible mobility. And as this is a smart conference, I have asked for 2 smart guests to join me in helping to answer that question. I'm delighted to have Paul and Nicholas joining me, as the mouthful that follows Nicholas's title has already been done by Stephen. I won't read it again shortly. From my perspective, I've worked in the automotive leasing, fleet management, and mobility world for most of my working life, the last 25 years. And I joined Sixt approximately 3 years ago in order to drive the change in the fleet industry and basically to help our great industry to move to a more flexible, sustainable, and employee-focused world of mobility. And in 2019, we launched the Sixt Mobility Club, which was the title of this session, with the sole ambition of providing the first forum of its type in the fleet industry for executives to network and share information about the challenges that we face and find solutions, for how we overcome them in order to embrace and implement such flexible mobility solutions. Our friends at Nexus done a tremendous job in following, and we in fact combined some of our events together with them, with the Smart Mobility Institute events. But due to the pandemic and the influx of virtual events, which we all live with these days, we decided to pause that forum. But today, I'm delighted to initiate the restart of the Mobility Club on the basis that we hope that soon we will be able to again meet in person very soon and not live our lives exclusively virtually anymore. And we're delighted to Nexus for allowing us to integrate the the Sixt Mobility Club into the Smart Mobility Conference. The subject I want to talk to you about today then is why flexibility in mobility increases corporate efficiencies and employee well-being. A mouthful in its own right. But before meeting the smart guests who are going to help me to answer those questions, I'd like to take the opportunity just to set the scene a little bit and ultimately explain why the topic of flexibility in mobility is so important in general, but also to us at Sixt. So what even is mobility? And I decided for this session that we would have a discussion rather than slide share and share data on slides, because I'm actually delighted that we did that, because there's been a great number of presentations that have gone before, which have been absolutely exceptional. The data, the quality, the content has been super. But what we wanted to do was to help understand a little bit of the story here. So, when I started this mission, I had the view that it was a fully digital, multimodal solution supported with a mobility budget. We've heard that today, where all suppliers are integrated into one super app. Due to the complexity, however, and vast number of suppliers that are needed even by city, let alone by country, to integrate, it fast became clear 3 years ago that this was simply not possible. And today, with the realization, in fact, that there are many shades of grey between black and white, versus the company car on the one side, the car and Polaris shared on the other. So for many, what I have learned is that companies have implemented the last years has been exactly that, some form of grey. They've implemented basically a shade of grey, which they call mobility. But in reality, what we are witnessing now, due to the pandemic, is a game changer. Companies are looking to implement mobility policies, transitioning to EVs, as we've heard, hybrid working policies where employees come to the office 2-3 days a week, and suppliers can only meet buyers potentially during these days, means inevitably a lot less mileage in the future. We'll hear from Paul in a moment about that very point. And for many, the first time tackling the question of utilization and even eligibility, dare I say, due to those mileages being so low, and whether employees want a car allocated 1-to-1, 365 days, that challenge that comes with that obviously it will mean taking cars away from employees potentially, and tackling the workers' councils. So that's a bit of background, because it is clear that there is a change ahead. Everybody's talking about mobility. It is clear there's a change ahead. So what, when, where, even geographically, and in what scale and how it will change, we still do not know. This, my friends, is why flexibility in mobility is paramount now more than ever. And I hope you will recognize that Sixt is one of the founding partners. This is not a commercial for Sixt at all, quite the contrary, which is why we've organized the session in the way we have. But clearly we want to be transparent with you about why flexible mobility is so important to us, and moreover why we are so qualified on this topic. And Sixt is created to meet this demand, this flexible demand. The last year's a range of fully digital mobility solutions designed to meet the needs of the new normal, as we now call it, the new flexible world of mobility in favor of car ownership. In fact, we've heard from Mercer's from a recent survey, 72% of employees surveyed wanted more flexibility in their benefits. For us, flexible mobility comprises of everything from car rental and sharing, which includes cars, scooters, bicycles, anything basically from 1 minute to 6 months in duration. Ride, taxi on demand, pre-book, subscription services like our long-term fleet, 6-month plans and flex, and our latest invention for those people that don't need or want a car, the same car all the time, but when they need one on demand, basically. So having listened to some great presentations this morning from the fellow founding partners, Frost & Sullivan, Here Technologies, talking about reducing stress for companies, employees, underutilization, now considered unacceptable, combined with a move away to a fixed fare scheduled service to an on-demand one. at the same price or less on a total cost of mobility basis, that is the Sixt motivation. And we've proven that with a car subscription proposition that effectively can form as an integral part of your fleet or mobility policy. But yet, as we've seen in recent studies, I'm delighted to say, has proven up to 20% savings, in line with the figures that actually Frost and Sullivan talked about earlier. So that's a bit of background about the context of why we wanted to share this with you today. And to complement those points, I've, as I mentioned, asked two very smart guests to join us. Paul, as you heard earlier, is the managing director at TMC, the Miles Consultancy, but he's also the chairman of the Association of Fleet Professionals. Paul, thank you very much for joining us. Very delighted to have you supporting us on this point. For those. For those of you who don't know, Paul is a recognised industry figure, panellist and presenter at various domestic and international conferences, but he's also widely regarded as an expert in MaaS and big data solutions. Paul, tell us a little bit about what you do at TMC and AFP.
Yeah, okay. So the AFP is we've got about just over 1,000 members. Majority are fleet managers in the UK. And we lobby, educate and train the fleet industry. So that's quite an important UK-based body. Obviously, there are international fleet managers in that community as well, but predominantly that organisation is looking at UK fleets and how we can effectively run UK fleet operations across the nations. TMC, my day job, where I'm managing director, we are a fuel, EV and data-led mobility company. So what we do is we bring together mobility data for big corporates. We've got a lot of blue chip organizations that use us. We're in about 42 markets now, and we knit together all of the mobility data so we can drill down for the corporate per employee about how much they're spending on their overall mobility needs.
Fantastic. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. As you heard in my introduction, Sixt very much prides itself on pioneering mobility solutions to support the transition to a more flexible type of mobility in the future. I'm sure your data will be greatly supportive in that. I mean, we heard recently a survey that was conducted in 2020 in the midst of the pandemic that average business mileage in the UK was an average of 8,000 miles a year domestically. Post-pandemic, inevitably a lot more. As a company that collects mileage data for a living, can you give us a bit of background about how mileage has evolved between 2019 and today, and also, I guess, if you have that information, what the split of business and private miles was?
Yeah, of course. Well, the BVLA data's come from TMC to start off with, so that's our info. But it's an interesting mixed bag, as you'd expect. So on company cars, between March and February 19 to 20 and 20 to 21, we've seen company car trip mileage down by about 37%. We've seen van mileage up by 20%. And we've also seen cash allowance, so employees that take cash, their business miles down by about 30% as well. But interestingly, on the personal mileages, we've seen them all go up. And I think that's predominantly a reflection of the fact that a lot of people have holidayed at home domestically. It's only been about 200 kilometres per month extra personal mileage on company cars, but it's still significant to show that there's been a lot more personal mileage in those cars as they've been going about their business. Personal use on vans has only gone up 4%, so only marginal. And then on cash allowance drivers, it's gone up by 10% in terms of personal miles as well, which again is quite fascinating, I think. So although we think that there was zero road traffic across Europe from March onwards last year, actually, there was a lot less business miles, but actually people were still doing a fair few more, on aggregate over a 12-month period, doing a fair few more private miles.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I'm curious to see, and we'll talk about that in a minute, about how you see the future. But is it only mileage data that you collect? I seem to remember you talking about something in your introduction about other data. Tell us a little bit.
So it's not just mileage in terms of business and private. We take commute mileage as well, but obviously also taking in rental data, travel at T&E data, lease data, SMR data, insurance data, all into our ecosystem as well. So again, we see similar trends across that, deeper trends, I should say, as a lot of people have mentioned today, in terms of ground transportation and public train travel. Travel has been dropped significantly on our data as well.
Interesting. So all that information in one place. I mean, on the subject of travel, we'll hear in a minute from Nicholas on that specific point. But for the majority of corporates, only essential business travel has been allowed and is still currently. And many, however, including Bill Gates, forecast that we'll only see 50% of the levels that we witnessed in 2019 pre-pandemic, mainly due to the digital transformation of our world. Hence why we're in this virtual conference. But also, it does positively, and we can see that positively supports our sustainability goals to become more carbon neutral. I guess a change to how we work and live has already happened. So a change to the type of mobility provided to employees, foreseen for a long time in these forums, is now also finally inevitable. How would you see the permanent effects of COVID on our daily work lives and the need for mobility, Paul?
Well, I'm obviously not as biased as Bill Gates in terms of everybody moving teams, but there's definitely a change in the use of company cars, and therefore then the improvement of mobility solutions and the increased uptake and interest in mobility solutions moving forward. We're seeing that if you start to collect all the data around the reasons why you've got a car in your fleet, or you're providing a cash allowance to that employee, and whether you could provide a substitute solution, is obviously of interest to a lot of fleets. But the days of cup of tea account management, as I would call it, are almost over. So that field-based employee that would see that routinely, that on a monthly basis, that customer, either monthly or quarterly, those roles are effectively going to see very little mileage moving forward. Sales guys, I'm a general believer that sales guys, people buy people, so you're going to want to see people, but in terms of the frequency of that face-to-face interaction is probably going to be less. But on the other side, there's a lot of company assets out there, company cars, that are effectively vans in disguise. So they are always going to have some seriously big miles on them as well. So again, a lot of people, a lot of fleets are collecting the data to set their strategies and trying to understand exactly within each segment why we're running cars, and do we therefore then need to think about offering an option. And also that's led by a lot of employee demand now, saying actually we do not want to own and be forced to own a company car, or have a cash allowance to then be forced to go off and buy a car to run on company business. We actually want to set ourselves up, and we will commit to having a mobility solution instead. And there's that demand coming in from the employees, as well as then the top down, and from us as mobility managers then starting to think, well, actually there must be a different way and different options that we can provide fleet employees around their overall mobility.
Yeah, I mean, that's the inevitable side is mileage reduces. We talked about the topic of utilization, talk about you collecting all this data, not just mileage data, but also T&E data. Can you give us some case studies of how you've supported customers to increase utilization with less cars, or reduce costs as a result of all this data that you collect, and how you would, I guess, the roadmap, if you like, of how to use that?
Well, for one big multinational, and this is with a lot of fleets, I mean, I don't necessarily like it, but they create an environment where if you do more than 8,000 or 10,000 kilometers on business a year, you are eligible for a company car. The data, as soon as you start to collect that data, you can then look at review the eligibility profile, and then chop people out of company cars if they're not achieving the threshold. So for one organisation, we save them over €2 million a year in helping them steer their eligibility priorities and profiles. Obviously, that creates an HR topic in itself, don't get me wrong. But again, it's about enforcing policies in the right way. A lot of our customers are looking at when they give employees car allowance, and then the employee takes a train all the time.
Sure.
So we've got one big baker in the UK that's been looking at that and saved nearly £1 million in terms of their overall flexibility by offering a more beefed up car allowance, which includes the train travel as well. There's a lot of the battleground as well as in the car parks as well. So the amount of trips that you're paying for private cars in and out of car parks within your own estate, within your own property portfolio. So why do that when you can then be more efficient with pool vehicles and car clubs? So we work with a lot of customers on that, and also commutes, employees being able to claim their commute mileage when actually they should be office-based or home-based, and looking at all of that as well. So there's lots and lots of reasons. I mean, I could go on forever, but there's lots and lots of reasons for collecting some of the data and how to optimize your fleet.
That's brilliant, Paul. Thank you very much. And on that point, go on forever. We don't have forever, unfortunately. We have our second smart guest, and I'm told already time is short. So we move on. Thank you very, very much, Paul. Nicholas, coming from EY, you've been at 5 years at EY, responsible for EMEIA, EMEIA. With the change of how we work in the future, a very relevant point that was raised by Paul. I guess, Nicholas, you speak on behalf of EY and its thousands of travellers, being specifically coming from the travel segment as opposed to fleet. We deliberately asked you to join us. I'm really curious to hear about what changes EY has adopted for how its employees will work and come to the office in the future with this new hybrid working, and how this will impact both the budget, corporate efficiencies, and employee well-being. Greetings, Nicholas.
Yeah, greetings. Glad to be here. Thanks, Stuart, for having us. EY has always seen itself as a employer of choice, and so flexibility has always sort of been baked into what EY offers to its employees. But I would say that's been sort of magnified with the recent situation for sure. And I think what you've maybe sort of picked up, because a lot of it has been sort of in the domain, are the member firms within EY actually saying to the employees in each country, hey, we've had a sort of flexible approach before, but now we're going to codify it. We're going to sort of put it into our ways of working going forward, and actually saying to people, you can now work from home 3-4 days a week, giving people that option, being very transparent about it, and really to sort of support people in doing that, making some changes, for example, to the way in which we use our real estate. So offices are valuable to us. It's important that we get our people together and do collaborate, but rather than having our offices sit there, for example, in London, in more London Place, and folks come in, and I'm guilty of this in the past myself, coming in and sitting at a desk and sort of putting my head down and sort of joining 8 hours of calls back to back, actually stripping some of those desks out, building more collaboration space in, and using the office for collaboration. So I think people will still come to the office for sure, but more for that purpose, probably more in numbers rather than as individuals. But for sure, people will spend more time at home or on the road, seeing the clients as well.
No, sure. That's indeed the case. And I think, we've heard in the media the last week's majority of large corporations publishing new hybrid working policies, people working from home 2 days a week. We've heard recently also your German team no longer offering company vehicles in favor of a range of car mobility solutions.
Correct. Yeah, I think what you've touched on, Stuart, in the introduction about flexible working patterns, I think what Germany is doing absolutely speaks to this. There's no point, a car, whether it's a cash allowance or an actual vehicle itself, is a sort of solid piece of the reward package so far. But of course, if people don't value that, then it's a pointless part of the reward package. So the way EY sees it, when you talk about budgets, for example, is not just managing costs down, it's just about reallocating that cost internally. So instead of sort of going out and purchasing 45,000 Mercedes Benzes or whatever it happens to be, instead it's saying, actually, we'll give you the flexibility to buy into shared car usage when you need it, but we'll take this cash we're saving from the car program and we'll invest, as we have done in EY, to give everybody in EY, that's 300,000 of us, the chance to do a free MBA through our learning division. So we're reallocating what we think are priorities in people's lives and giving people still that option of having some ability, but using that budget in other ways as well to support well-being or education and personal growth.
Interesting. So I think coming to conclusion of the session, as I know that we have time restriction, Nicholas. Sorry. I just want one other quick question before we finish, because I think it's very relevant. Your understanding of the travel world. You have TMCs, you have online booking tools, you have preferred suppliers. We hear a lot about startups being used to create platforms, booking tools for mobility. But what do you think could be the case in terms of basically for the business use, people using the established travel processes that you use today?
I want to see startups. I want to see disruptors. I want to see innovation brought to the marketplace. It is a fragmented field, the sort of ground transportation, the widest possible definition. I want to see innovation in this field, but I do want it controllable. But I want it controlled in a simple way. So bring those platforms into our existing ecosystem, because we've got an in-house built approval system, for example, to help demand management and internal cost management. That's important to my stakeholders. But easy booking is also very important. We want our folks out there being entrepreneurs, meeting our clients. They have to have simple ways of interacting. And the easiest way of doing that is to take what the startups are creating and build it into our overall ecosystem. So eventually, quite frankly, the travelers just know what they're doing in terms of where to go and then how to book when they do get there. That's important for us.
Okay, fantastic. Stephen has appeared in the top left-hand corner. We could always continue. I could always continue all day, as you know, Stephen. Nicholas, Paul, thank you. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Pleasure. I guess the key takeaway is how to enact that flexibility. Stephen, my friend.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Nicholas. Thank you, Paul.